Welcome back to another episode of Chatting Cinema. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what we want to see in a sequel to Matt Reeves's The Batman.
But before we get into that, I just want to say this is episode 50,
I
boys.
know, 50th episode.
Pretty
Yo.
exciting.
Pretty
I just
nuts.
want to say I love chatting movies with you guys. I
Yeah.
started in a closet in a college, and I'm pretty excited that we're still doing it, even in
That
our.
feels like a lifetime ago. Like,
It
Yeah.
really
I
is.
don't even. The
But
pandemic will do that to you, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
but hey, we're making
never-ending
video
one.
essays. We're still making episodes, and then the Batman's a real thing, and we're gonna talk about it.
That is very correct. I'll start off. I just want to see more Gotham. Like, I can't wait to be back in that world again.
Fun.
Yeah.
So well realized.
Yeah.
I really think that watching the Batman, and I've seen it 5 times now, I think.
Yeah, I think you're.
I think that when Matt Reeves sat down to make this movie, I think Gotham was really towards the top of his list of like, this is things that we have to get right because of just how alive it feels, and just how lived in and worn out. I think that him and the production design team and everybody involved in VFX like really spent a lot of effort and time and said, this is one thing that's paramount that we get right. So it's a good answer.
Yeah, I mean, for me, something that I've wanted desperately in every iteration of Batman, and we even got it once, and it was is Robin. I want it so bad. And I thought of 2 guys that could play different Robins. I wanted to put more time into thinking of it and pick like a Tim as well, but for Dick Grayson, I think Noah Jupe could do it justice. I think he's still young enough to kind of
Good
pull off
choice.
like a younger Dick Grayson.
Yeah.
And give it 5 years. I think that kid's gonna glow up, and I think it'd be pretty fun to see him turn into Nightwing.
Wow.
It's a good choice.
So,
That'd be
yeah,
cool.
so that's my choice for Dick Grayson, and then my choice for Jason Todd, and my true choice. And this is in a world where I guess the Gotham TV show didn't happen. It would be Cameron Monaghan every day if he was a kid. Cameron Monaghan's ridiculous. He's a great actor, but I feel like because he was in Gotham, it would just be kind of confusing and they wouldn't really do that.
Sure.
But ironically, I'm choosing one of his television siblings from Shameless, Ethan Katowski, because I haven't watched a ton of Shameless. I just watched it with my friend Cassie when new episodes were on. She wanted to see it. But his character on that show, Carl, actually kind of is a Jason Todd-esque kid where like he's kind of rough around the edges. He has a good heart, doesn't really know how to convey things the right way. And he's like 21 or 22 years old right now. And I feel like that could kind of work for this storyline where we meet Jason Todd as like a young adult. And he could probably pull off like a 17 or 18-year-old. But I think he's one of the people that gets praised a lot from Shameless for playing Carl. And I think it'd be kind of cool to see that. I just desperately want a Robin and a Bat family because Nolan, he teased us with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and we knew we weren't getting anything after Rises. So
his real name is Robin.
Yeah, but like we're not getting a freaking Bat family. I'm like, all right, fine. But every other Batman franchise hasn't had the time to flesh out a Bat family. And like I'd love to see Batgirl get introduced. I'd love to see Tim Drake Robin. And then like, you can get into all the other side characters. And I just want to see that because I loved how this movie was really just about Pattinson's Batman. But one of my favorite parts of Batman is how he changes because of the people around him throughout his time wearing the cowl. And I would love to see Reeves start tackling that next movie. Let's get a Robin in there. Let's get Dick Grayson going.
Wow. I echo a lot of those sentiments. One of the things that's hard for me as we sit down and do something like this and thinking about comic book adaptations in general is how deep is this going to go, right? Like how much are Reeves and Pattinson specifically, how many times are they going to want to do this? Because, we're still in the honeymoon phase and they can say all they want, like we want to keep doing this forever. But I think it gets to a point where, they kind of want to branch out and do something different. And I think that they'll get to a point where they're like, we feel like we've, staked our claim and had our run on this character. So much of this is predicated on like how much time do we have, right? Because there's so much. Batman has such a wide world of characters. And you look at, for comparison, the MCU, obviously very different, but just in terms of comic book adaptations, I mean, we're over 20 movies in, we have multiple series now. We've basically crossed over everything, and now we're even branching into different universes. And we're still not even scratching the surface of all that we could do as far as comic adaptation. So that was one of the things that was really difficult for me thinking about it, because I would bet that we are going to get a Robin, but I think we're only going to get one. And Dick Grayson is one of my favorite characters of all time. Like, I love Nightwing, but I think that we are going to get a version of Nightwing in quote unquote what the DCEU is now. And I think that we're going to get him, like, if not in Batgirl, in like that universe, that like pocket. So if I was picking a Robin, I would pick Jason Todd. And because I think that if you introduce Jason Todd in the next movie, then, having his death in like a trilogy capper, and like that's the Joker arc we get, could be a really interesting way of like breaking Pattinson. Because I think that one thing that Reeves and Pattinson are going to really dedicate time doing is finding how can we keep breaking Bruce, right? Like, how can we keep upping the stakes and still showing that at his core, he's going to be a hero. He's not going to break his rule, all of this. So I do think that we're going to get Jason Todd, and we're going to get the Death in the Family story with Barry Keoghan's Joker. So I don't have an actor that I picked out for Jason. I didn't really think about it, but I think we are going to get a Robin. I think it's going to be Jason Todd. So,
I mean, selfishly, I want them to do like 15 movies
yeah,
together.
that's
Yeah.
the problem. Like, I
Right.
want them to keep going until, I'm
And I
gone,
think-
and then stop.
I think based off of how this Penguin series does could help our case a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
Because if this does well, if it gets received well, I mean, it's Colin Farrell. I think it's going to be fine. Like, I think it's going to be good. So that could almost lead to like, we get Dick Grayson the next movie.
Yeah,
And then by the end,
Bat
he's ready to
family.
become Nightwing. Like,
Right.
like, I don't see that being unrealistic.
Yeah.
And I think that they should take advantage of this, because that's one of the things that like is my biggest gripe with the Dark Knight trilogy, is they don't really tap in to the Batman universe as much as they should. And like the villains they use, great, love to see it, great, like great choices. But there's always just that element of like, that's why the Batman cartoons rock, because everyone shows up at some point, and or even the DC animated movies. But I think a fun question to ask is, out of villains for Batman that we haven't seen teases for, because like, there's the Hush tease, there's the tease for Joker. So like, which villain would you like to see show up at some point?
I have one at the top of my list, and it's Poison Ivy. I think that, we've talked about this a little bit. I don't think we've talked about it on the podcast yet, but I think doing a grounded Poison Ivy as like an eco-terrorist could be fascinating. And, you look at something the way kind of Carly Morgenthau was handled on Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I think something like that, where, the motives are understandable and the execution is what makes it villainous. I think that version of Poison Ivy could be really fascinating and a really cool way to incorporate that character that we've seen once in live action. And it was, Uma Thurman was a good choice, but it's in a really odd take on the Batman mythos in Batman and Robin. So Poison Ivy is actually my number one villain that I want to see.
I guess this counts as a tease because Matt Reeves said it, but I would like to see his Mr. Freeze idea.
Yeah.
I don't know how they would pull it off in a grounded way, but they made it work with the Riddler here, so I'm not worried at all about how they'll do it. I'm just excited to see them do it. If they go that route, But I've been thinking a lot about, and this is a spoiler for the Batman, about Bruce's arc in the film, and how it really ends quite beautifully in that he realizes that he needs to be more than what he has been as just the Batman. So I'm excited to see the impact that Bruce will have on Gotham in a sequel. and how he'll step into that sort of public figure role.
Yeah.
That'll be really interesting. And then we got a lot of Gordon in this movie, and like we still haven't done the breakdown. Like, is this the most screen time Gordon has gotten in a standalone film, not just like a trilogy? Like, because obviously Gary Oldman would win. But
Yeah.
either way, I would like to see a window into Gordon's life more so than we even got in the Nolan trilogy. And I think that would be really, really interesting too. Because even in the comics, like Gordon has a lot of baggage, and like you could really explore that.
Yeah, I mean, Batman Year One, half of the comic is about Gordon.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'd be really interesting. And my knee jerk reaction would be yes, this is the most screen time in a single film. But yeah, that'd be something that we'd have to look into because Gary Oldman is such a big presence
But
in
also
each
we're
of those
thinking of the
films.
trilogy sense. So
Well,
like,
yeah, and I think that he does a lot with a little in those films. Like I think that
Right.
screen time wise, it doesn't. Whereas Jeffrey Wright's Gordon is popping up with him all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you say about watching Bruce step into the public figure role, I would be really interested to see. You talk about Mr. Freeze too. If that could be something they do in the next film, where Bruce Wayne in the Batman continuity knows jack shit about what's happening at Wayne Enterprises, right? He doesn't. I mean, the financial people are being dragged to the penthouse by Alfred, and Bruce is pissed off that they're coming. So, could they go the route of Victor Freeze being a Wayne Enterprises employee? And when Bruce Wayne makes this conscious decision to be more public and be more involved, he finds out that, outside of protocol, Nora is cryogenically frozen in a Wayne Enterprises building and fires Victor Freeze. And that's like the whole reason for Victor's villainous turn in this, like what Scott Snyder does with the character. I think that would be really interesting. And I think that could work really well, especially, looking at like how Bruce, because the Riddler has like a very clearly defined, this is a constant with Batman villains, the Joker is constantly saying this, but the Riddler, point blank says, I'm here because of you. You created me. Right. So doing that, but kind of the reverse, like Bruce Wayne becoming more involved and creating Batman's new adversary, man, that could really work in the next one. I don't know what they're gonna do grounded wise, like how they use that character's power set, but I'm getting excited just thinking about that. Like that could be really, really good.
I mean, I hope Reeves kind of lets up on those reins a little bit, where like, yeah, you don't have to do insane frozen man with like guns that can freeze people. But like think of some kind of comic booky ways to introduce some tech, because like we got to tease a Bane, and I don't know, like I don't think I want another like grounded non-comic Bane because we already got it with Tom Hardy. Like I would rather see like a luchador drugged up Bane like the comics. Like he's just a large man and he's using drugs to get larger.
Yeah, I really hope. I mean, it's something that Nolan, like, I think the execution kind of falters because like Bane's plan doesn't hold up to scrutiny, but Bane is towards the top of my list too. I actually have 3 here, and it's Poison Ivy, Mr. Freeze, and Bane. And Bane's a very interesting adversary because he's super strong, but also hyper intelligent. Like he consistently deduces who the Batman is. So that could pose a really interesting challenge for Bruce as well. So Bane is up there for me.
Yeah.
I know Dave Bautista wants to do it, so
I'm in.
I'm cool with that. I have just like a rundown because they're doing the Arkham spinoff of I'll do some rapid fire characters I want to see in that series. That'd be cool to see. Calendar Man, Professor Pig, Mad Hatter, Zaz, Anarchy, and Scarface were characters I all wrote down that I think all of them are really well handled in the Arkham games. And I think that it would be really cool to see those characters. And the reason I put them in the Arkham spinoff is when you're doing a Batman film series, sometimes characters like that, it's like, well, we kind of want to do the bigger ones, right? Like, I don't know if I'm be lining up for the Anarchy film, the same way that they're going to be lining up for, Mr. Freeze or Poison Ivy, like characters people know. But I would like to see some of those characters in the Arkham spinoff. I think it could be really cool, and I'm curious to see what he does with what Reeves and company do with that show, especially because it came so organically. Like they didn't even want to do it at first, but then they just kind of realized like that's what they were making. Yeah, I'm super curious to see how they handle that.
Yeah. What do you guys think the turnaround time is? Like, how soon do you think we'll see this trilogy finish or
Ooh,
even continue?
interesting.
Good question.
20.
I mean, I feel the show's got to be either end of this year or early next year, right? Because like this movie came out first quarter this year.
I don't know about the production on that show, like whether what stage it's in, and
I don't know how far along they are.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we really don't know, because like we thought it was Gotham PD until after the movie. But
sequel 2025, like, is that the time frame that I don't know? I
would rather them take their time,
yeah,
and like let these TV shows live a bit and like make the world feel more lived in. So when we come back to Gotham, there's like the threat of other people showing up, because like Reeves did with this first movie, we got Catwoman, Riddler, and Penguin. So like if we introduce Mad Hatter or Zaz or any plethora of Batman characters in these shows, there's nothing stopping them from having them pop up in a scene or two in the movies to cause some mayhem. And like that was something the Nolan movies did really well too, is that as much as it's cool to see like a hero fight one villain, I feel like it's always been a Batman thing where he's just like, ah, shit, another one popped up, like while he's trying to pop another one. I mean, that's like especially apparent in all the cartoons, is like they're always like accidentally teaming up the villains.
I wouldn't be surprised actually to see Condiment King in the Arkham series, because Pattinson specifically mentioned him by name as his favorite Batman villain. So I think they might throw that in there as like a little treat for Robert.
I would.
He can have a little Condiment Man as a treat.
What if he plays him too? That would be
like
funny.
Prosthetics, like as Condiment Man. I think they do 4 of these. That's I don't know. Like trilogy seems so like, logical, and I want them, like Luke said, like to do a zillion of them, keep going. But I like them to do 4, and one thing actually I'll say, this is a bit scatterbrained. But as we were talking about like the turnaround time for this and how much time, I'm curious to see how the flooding of Gotham plays into the sequel, because that seems like such a distinct choice that it feels like it has to tie into something else. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Maybe it's just to facilitate the conditions for Penguin's rise for his series. But I am curious to see if that plays a part, because like I said, it feels like a really distinct choice. But
I wouldn't rule out Killer Croc just for that alone.
Yeah.
I don't think Reeves would go that mystical, but at the same time, it's like, all right, you just flooded the city. This guy would have a field day.
That would be
yeah. Yeah.
Or just Lizard from Spider-Man.
I think doing 4 would be really interesting, because I think that if you did do the Jason Todd thing, and really by the end of the 3rd one, he beats Joker, he doesn't kill him, even though Joker's killed Jason. I don't even think you do Red Hood, to be honest, because I don't see how you would have to like not have Jason die. Because I don't think Matt Reeves is going to have a Lazarus pit in his adaptation. But I think that it would be really fascinating to do that in the 3rd one, and then kind of like, have that be the point where like you don't think Bruce can be broken any further, and then let it breathe a little bit, and then do a 4th movie with the Court of Owls. Because I do think that Matt Reeves is going to do the Court of Owls at some point. I'd wager that it's not in the next one, but if they do a trilogy, I think it will be the 3rd storyline they do. I think, however,
it would be too soon, because like some of the plot points they hit with this first movie with Riddler exposing Gotham Elite. I mean,
yeah,
not spoiling the Court of Owls storyline, but essentially that's kind of leaning into some things from that. So I think it would be smart to distance it with like a pretty distinct other storyline with a different villain. And I
Yeah.
like your thought about it being like a fourth movie separated a bit from the trilogy,
Yeah.
almost like its conclusion to the character.
Yeah, to be honest, to me, like however many movies they make, it should be the last one, Court of Owls, because
As a much
I
more experienced Batman.
I think Bruce gets broken in a way that's really fascinating to see in that storyline. And I have some ideas on how it might have been teased, but I won't talk about them now. But be on the
Mhm.
lookout because I do want to delve into it because I think that I'm right. Um, but I do, like I said, I think that they're gonna do Court of Owls at some point. Pattinson's been talking Reeves' ear off about it. He loves the story, apparently. So that would be really cool to see. And it's one of those things. There's some fantastical elements about the Court of Owls, specifically with the Talons, that I don't think that they would do uh in the movies, but you could do that in you could easily adapt it in a grounded way where you don't do specifically how they use the talons. In the comic story, it is one of these stories that's kind of better with a bat family. So I would be curious to see like how many strays Bruce picks up along the way and
More.
how many of them would be utilized in that final, you know, film. But
I also want to just throw out there for prediction's sake that Matt Reeves likes to be a little trickster with his words.
mm,
And what if he just threw that mystical quote out there to throw us off from every Batman villain that has a shred of mysticality to them, where it's like, you don't think Scarecrow would work because they already did the grounded take, but what if he just goes full on fear gas Scarecrow? Or
I would be very down to see like Arkham
like,
Knight Scarecrow.
Oh
I
man,
think,
that'd be
I think
crazy.
that I really do think that there's a chance that that's real, where like Matt does like to throw people off. And by saying that, it's kind of puzzled us as to who the next villain could be, because it kind of like shoehorned us in one way.
Yeah.
But I hope he's just deceiving us and he goes really mystical with some of this stuff.
Well, you know what? And if it becomes a theme going forward of like villains crippling Gotham, like any one of these could do it. Scarecrow,
Yeah,
Poison Ivy, Mr. Freeze, and like that's a scary thing to think about.
yeah,
But I think for me going forward, if I wanted to sort of wrap up a little bit, you know, I trust them so much. I feel like
yeah,
the character is in such capable hands now. And this is not a dig at the Nolan trilogy or anyone who came before, but like Pattinson and Reeves feel like such fans of the source
yeah,
material
yeah,
that like they could just do anything, and it would
yeah,
probably turn out really good.
yeah,
And I think that's the most exciting thing going forward with this trilogy is like, we can throw our predictions out there and our desires, but it's also like whatever they make, we'll be excited to sit down and watch. And
yeah,
that's to me is the most exciting thing going forward. And probably their greatest achievement just with the first film, is that they make you feel that.
yeah. I completely echo those sentiments. I don't think that there has been a director that's made something Batman that likes Batman more than Matt Reeves or has a better handle on the character than Reeves does. And to pair that with Pattinson, who so clearly in all of the press to this, like really, really did his homework and, really felt the responsibility to get this right. And also interesting is one of these things where like Pattinson begged to play this character, like not Reeves himself, but he was talking about how his agents like didn't think he'd be interested in Batman because he only wanted to play freaks. This is paraphrasing, but almost a direct quote. And Pattinson said he is a freak, and he's right. He's right. So yeah, I think that this take on the character is ideal. And like we've said, like if they want to make 12 of them, sign me up. But it's one of these things where like you can say that all you want in the beginning and it feels like this seemed like a very, even before, even if the pandemic wasn't a factor, a daunting production. Like
Yeah.
it feels like they put everything they had into this, and I'm sure they can do it a few more times, but you keep doing that in the same universe and it can really drain a person. I think that's why so many trilogies end up with lackluster third entries because you're just like burnt out by the time you get to the third one. But I am banking on that not being the case here. And I think that Reeves, as much as he said, I wasn't thinking about the future, I was just focused on making this movie and making it self-contained. I think that he's probably being a little cheeky there, and he definitely has some ideas.
I like that.
Yeah.
I feel like Kevin Feige would appreciate that from some of his co-conspirators.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm super stoked to see whatever they do next. Like you said, Gianni, no matter what they do, I'm sure it's going to be great. But I certainly have my ideas for what I would like to see. But
yeah, I mean, like I desperately want a Robin, but at the end of the day, we got 3 or 4, or I would even say 5 interpretations of Batman characters we really knew well that were just so fresh, but also so comic book, and it was just nice. So it's like, all right, Reeves, you can do whatever the hell you want. We're gonna go see it 15 times again. So
yeah, and I will say I think that the one thing that I would want from a Batman adaptation, if you just asked me, like, the Reeves things didn't exist. Like, if you asked me in 2008 after The Dark Knight, what do you want out of the Batman movie? I would have said a good Riddler. So the fact that we already got that, I'm playing on house money for this anyway. So
good stuff. Well, with that, we are looking forward to the Batman sequel. Be on the lookout for this potential Court of Owls theory video.
It's coming eventually.
And yeah, with that, we will catch you in the next one.